So just to kind of get going, today we are really excited about today's topic. We're going to talk a little about Giving Tuesday. And we have Stephen Shuddock from Bloomerang, and really excited about talking a little bit about Giving Tuesday. And Stephen's going to kind of run through some ideas about retaining donors. So Stephen, welcome. Thank you for your time. And again, apologize about that technical difficulty.
No worries.
On our end.
There's always webinar gremlins. So thanks to all of you for hanging out. We won't keep you past 2 o'clock Eastern as scheduled. I know it's a busy time of year for everybody. But yeah, thanks for taking the time out to have me, and thanks for Aplos for putting this all together. It's a really important topic. So I work at Bloomerang. I also run my own nonprofit because apparently I don't have enough to do. So I know sometimes people don't really like to hear from donor database vendors that much, but I'm really going to be speaking today as a fundraiser. I'm going to be wearing my fundraising hat. But I do travel and speak a lot. So if you see my name on a conference sheet, be sure to stop by, say hi, let me know that you heard me on the Aplos webinar, because I'd love to meet you in person. So we had Giving Tuesday. It's been a couple, 10 days, 14 days or so, almost 14 days. It was a really good Giving Tuesday. We've seen Giving Tuesday increase every year since its inception in the early 2010s or so. And I kind of have to give a caveat for you guys. It's cool that, Aplos invited me on to talk about Giving Tuesday, but one quick confession, I'm not the biggest Giving Tuesday fan, honestly. I think that it's hard to do fundraising in an effective way on Giving Tuesday. There's certainly organizations that do it well. But I got to congratulate Aplos for framing this presentation in the way that they did, because it would have been really easy to just have someone come on in November or whatever and just talk about getting Giving Tuesday gifts. But we're going to talk about how to get those new donors or existing donors who gave to you last week or 2 weeks ago to give again, because I'm kind of a retention guy, and really donor retention is way more important than donor acquisition. I'm going to kind of lay out that case for you this afternoon, this morning. The other thing with Giving Tuesday is with this growth, there's a lot of competition. I wrote a blog post last week. I did kind of a rundown of all of the Giving Tuesday appeals that I received on the 29th. I received over 40. That was just from organizations that I had only given one gift to. This wasn't even organizations that I loyally give to year after year. There's a lot of competition. You're competing against basically every other nonprofit in the country and in the world on Giving Tuesday, and yet this is the day that we decide to send out an appeal. So sometimes these appeals can be lost. Sometimes these appeals can be very kind of impersonal, and there really is, it's very hard to kind of stand out amongst the crowd. But I got 2 pieces of good news for you. It is very easy to stand out amongst the crowd when it comes to gift acknowledgement and donor stewardship and following up with all these donors, because not a lot of organizations are doing the things that I'm going to be talking about today. And the second thing that I want to say about it before I move on is don't lose sight of all of the other great days of giving that are about to happen. Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve historically have basically dwarfed Giving Tuesday in terms of gift amount and gift volume. So even though we have seen that big growth, and I know this spreadsheet this graph is a couple years out of date, but even with that growth that we saw in 2016, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve still dwarf Giving Tuesday. So if you're going to send out some appeals, I would maybe recommend doing it on those days, maybe even instead of Giving Tuesday. You don't have to ignore Giving Tuesday completely, but don't lose sight of those days. There's not going to be a lot of people sending out email appeals, I guarantee you, on those days. So it could be a really big opportunity for you. But Giving Tuesday is still okay. I think that you can do a lot of cool things on it and make a difference there. But I just don't want you to lose sight, especially since today is December 12th. And you might be able to make some cool things happen. People want to make those gifts before end of year, before tax time, just to get it on their 2016 taxes. And I don't think you'll run into much competition there. So just a little aside before we move on into Giving Tuesday. Don't want you to lose sight of those 2 days.
And then real quick, Stephen, before you I just want to remind everybody out there that if you are a Twitter user and you're active on Twitter, we love to hear from you. And you can use the hashtag @AplosWebinar or hashtag #AplosWebinar. And at the end of the presentation, Stephen will have his Twitter handle as well as mine. So we love to interact with you throughout. And then also we'll do questions at the very end. So thanks, you guys. And thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, definitely send me those tweets as we go along. So why retention? I'm not the only person who is interested in retention. In fact, there is an entire think tank that is devoted to donor retention. They're called the Fundraising Effectiveness Project. You may have heard about them. They're kind of this really cool collaboration between AFP and the Urban Institute. And they study donor retention every year in the United States of nonprofits in North America. How well are we retaining donors? Are we good at it? Are we bad at it? And it turns out that we're actually not very good at retaining donors. On average, or I guess the median donor retention rate, to be more specific, it's only 43%. So we're not very good at retaining the donors we do get. And they haven't, in the 10 years that they've been studying donor retention, they haven't drilled down into Giving Tuesday specifically for a couple of reasons. It might be kind of hard to do that with all the data that they collect, and because Giving Tuesday is so new. But there is one stat that they do report on, and this is the most recent stat for first-time donors. We are only retaining 29% of first-time donors. And if the gift amount is under $100, that retention rate drops to 21%. So almost 80% of the people who give one gift or their first gift to our organization are never going to give a second gift. So as we think about Giving Tuesday gifts, and this is a total assumption, but I would assume that the majority of you guys who got Giving Tuesday gifts, I doubt a lot of those gifts were under or were over $100. They were probably maybe around the $5 to $25 range on Giving Tuesday, lots of small gift amounts. So you could surmise perhaps that Giving Tuesday donors who have never given to our organizations prior to that are perhaps at the most risk of lapsing, right? Because it is kind of a massive, not a very personal fundraising approach, and because the dollar amounts are probably going to be a little bit low, certainly under $100. So that's why we're really going to focus on retention here, because not retaining those donors can be very expensive for you going into the future, and I'll kind of explain why. The good news is if you can get a second gift from a donor, that retention rate almost triples to 64%. So once you get a second gift from a donor, you're in pretty good shape in terms of retention. Only about 36% of those donors are going to lapse going forward. So the whole premise of today's presentation is to kind of give you some ideas of how you can get the second gift from your new Giving Tuesday donors specifically. We're going to focus on some strategies to do that. Just as an aside, for as long as they've been studying donor retention, hasn't really improved. We've basically been saying in the 40th percentile here. It got as low as 39% a few years ago. But this is what I mean by standing out, not on retention and stewardship and very personal gift acknowledgements, to be specific. So there really is a good opportunity to stand out amongst the crowd, especially since you've probably been lost in the shuffle or amongst that big crowd on Giving Tuesday as a fundraiser. So who cares? Who cares if we're 39% or 43% or 29%? Well, this little table here illustrates how quickly that pool of donors evaporates. Even if you have an average donor retention rate of 40%, which is a 60% attrition rate. So we're looking at that bottom row there. That's just average. You're doing pretty good, honestly. If you have 1,000 new donors in 1 year, after 1 year, you're down to 400 right off the bat. 600 donors are completely gone. They're never going to come back again. So just to break even on that previous year, you need to acquire 600 new donors just to break even, not even to increase your sustainability or get some extra money in the door. That's a lot of work. That doesn't sound very fun to me as a fundraiser personally, acquiring 600 new donors just to break even. But then look what happens after 5 years. You're down to 10 donors from that original donor pool. So again, to break even, we need 990 new donors to get back to work. So this is really bad for you, because those 10 people, those are the only people that you can even try to solicit a major gift from, right? If you're a major gift fundraiser, you know that you need a donor giving to you 5, 6, 7 years before you can even think about starting that whole process. So major gift fundraisers really kind of hate this retention issue because that's their pipeline. What about dollars raised? This is a super busy graph, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I'll sum it up this way. If you're an organization who raises $1 million per year, if you can change your donor retention rate by 1%, a 1% increase will get you about $40,000 extra in that year from those donors. So, raise your hand if you want an extra 40 grand. I mean, I've got my hand raised for sure. So just a small change in your retention, a small improvement can mean a lot of extra money for your bottom line. And one thing that this table doesn't illustrate is, yeah, those people are donating for you for longer and you're getting extra money, but they're probably also doing other things for you. Maybe they're volunteering, maybe they're fundraising for you, maybe they're on a committee or a board, they're certainly talking about you. So keeping those donors around can do other pretty cool things beyond just the dollars that they raise. That's why it's so important to retain these donors, because it really is a significant increase in the revenue that you're getting year after year. And the other thing is, it's very expensive to acquire new donors. The cost of acquiring a new donor is astronomical compared with the cost of just retaining ones you already have. That's why we're really going to focus on retaining those new Giving Tuesday donors. More bad news, and I swear we'll get to the good stuff here really quickly, but retention is a big deal because donors don't tend to spread their dollars around to many charities. Even if you're a 1%er, if you earn more than $100,000 a year, you're probably only donating to 4 to 5 organizations. And you can cut that number in half right away, because typically you're giving to a church that you attend, or you're giving to a school that maybe you attend or you send your kids to or your grandkids to. So really, it's kind of a rough game of musical chairs. And that's why it's so important to retain the donors that you have, because if you lose them, they're going to go somewhere else and not, spread those dollars between you and somebody else. Even if you tick them off, they're still going to go. So you're fighting for a small amount of musical chairs here. And that's organization supported. Even dollars sent to those organizations, not terribly significant. Even among those 1%ers, among those 6-figure earners, it still only gets to about $2,000, the median gift amount there annually. So retaining these donors you already have, it just makes sense. They already like you. You've already gone through the trouble of acquiring them. You've made your Giving Tuesday plan. You've sent that email. You've done all your social media posts. You've put a lot of time and effort into it. So why not do just a couple of quick things to make sure they stick around, rather than having to refill that leaky bucket and just get back to break even for the people who leave? So why are donors leaving? Why do donors lapse? Why do Giving Tuesday donors lapse? I think that the things you're about to see here really come into focus when we think about Giving Tuesday. 2 surveys I want to share with you really quickly. This survey was done by the IU School of Philanthropy here in Indianapolis. They wanted to know why are we at 43% retention? Why are we at 21% on the first-time side? So the Louis School of Philanthropy, they reached out to some nonprofits and they asked them to survey their lapsed donors. They basically just wanted to find out, hey, why did you stop giving to our organization? What were the reasons for doing so? And these are the top reasons that were given, and you're going to see some percentage points here. They don't all add up to 100% because people could give different answers. But here are the reasons those lapsed donors gave for why they stopped giving. 5% thought that the charity didn't need them. 8% thought that, or they weren't given information or told how their dollars were being spent. They wanted to know, hey, how are you using my donation? So the organization didn't report back on those outcomes, so the donors stopped giving. 9% had no memory of supporting, which I always think is kind of weird, but look at the next one. This may shed some light on it. 13% never got thanked for donating. So just the sheer act of thanking your donors would have kept 13% of these guys around at least, and not even thanking quickly or thanking personally or a handwritten note or whatever, just saying thank you at all would have kept them around. 16% passed away, 18% received poor service or communication, 36% thought other organizations were more deserving, so there's that musical chair analogy again, they gave somewhere else, and a little over half could no longer afford their current gift, which always kind of breaks my heart because the nonprofit maybe could have stepped in and say, oh no, we would still appreciate that gift from you. It's okay if it's only $50 instead of $100. We would still appreciate it. We would still put it to good use. And these are all the great things we would do with that money.
So there's a huge lesson here in terms of the work you do year-round, not just on Giving Tuesday.
Absolutely. And it's really easy to communicate all these things, how the dollars are being spent, saying thank you, keeping that line of communication open, and showing that you are a deserving organization, that you are actually doing really cool things with these donations.
Yeah.
So as we talk about how to retain donors and how to communicate to them, we're really going to kind of reverse engineer this list and the next list I'm going to share with you, which looks at the other side of the coin. Why do donors stay loyal? This is a survey that was done, very similar methodology. They reached out to loyal donors, people who are still giving to organizations. I think they polled 250 organizations and all of their donors within. So they asked these loyal donors, hey, why do you keep giving? What are the reasons that you keep giving? And here were the top 7 reasons those loyal donors gave. And this is really interesting because it almost exactly mirrors that previous survey that I shared with you that was completely different data set, almost 10 years difference, but it's the exact other side of the coin. So number 1 reason was that the donor perceives that your organization is effective. So you do what you say you're going to do, and you report on those outcomes. This whole issue of outcomes reporting is something that is going to run through the rest of the presentation. Donors really feel like their gift is an investment in your organization. They want to know, how are you using my dollars? Are you being a good steward? I know, what kind of successes are you having with my donations? We want to know, because we feel like we are trying to create these outcomes in the world. It's not just what the organization is doing, but it's what the donor, what kind of change the donor is creating in the world. And you've got to communicate that back. 2, donor knows what to expect from your organization with each interaction. This one's a little nuanced, so I'm going to kind of give you some negative examples of ways that nonprofits don't follow that one. We'll dig into that as well. 3, and 3 is my favorite, donor receives a timely thank you. So here's the gift acknowledgement thing comes up. The number 3 reason is that not just that the donor is thanked, and we saw from the previous survey that sometimes donors are not thanked at all, but that they are thanked in a timely manner. They're thanked quickly. They're thanked very soon after the gift is made. We're going to look at that as well. Donor receives opportunities to make his or her views known. So it's kind of a feedback mechanism. You know, you're keeping that line of communication open. Maybe you're soliciting feedback, not just willing to receive it, but actively soliciting it. 5, kind of similar to number 1, donor is given the feeling that he or she is part of an important cause. Donor feels that they are appreciated, and the donor receives information showing who is being helped. So there's the outcomes thing again. So this is it. If you want to retain donors, this is all you got to do. Thank them quickly, let them know how you're going to use their gift and how you have used their gift. Keep the line of communication open, and make sure you're not sending anything that is weird. You know, you're not appealing for a gift the day after someone donates. You're using their preferred communication channels, and you're not, you're not sending things that are misspelled. You know, you're using the donor's name. You're not sending something to maybe someone who has passed away, and the surviving spouse is receiving that, and then there are all kinds of negative feelings crop up there. So really, what we're going to do the rest of the time is give you some ideas of how you can do these 7 things for your Giving Tuesday donors, and you still have time. I know a few days have passed, 10 days or so, 14 days or so, but you still have time to do these things, and I'll give you some ideas. Now, what tends to happen with Giving Tuesday gifts is, because it's such a high volume and perhaps a kind of an impersonal method of fundraising, is someone donates online, our donor database or our PayPal or whatever sends an automated receipt, and that's it. And that's all these donors get from us, because it's December, it's end of year, we're super busy, maybe we're still wrapping up that end of year campaign, and we don't think about it. And donors don't consider receipts, email receipts, to be a gift acknowledgement, because they're not a gift acknowledgement. I mean, this looks like something I get at the supermarket or at the gas station, and we're donating to organizations. We're not buying tires, we're not buying a gallon of milk. You know, we're trying to transform their mission and fund their mission. And I think that this is why not just Giving Tuesday donors, but all online donors are at a very great risk of lapsing, because this is all we tend to send to people. They get this kind of perfunctory receipt, and that's it. And then what do we do afterwards? We're sending them more appeals, direct mail, email newsletters, and they haven't really received anything from us that is very warm, that truly thanks the donor. I mean, look at both of these receipts. I mean, they barely say thank you at all. We're certainly not telling them how we're going to use their donations or maybe how past donations have been used. And there's no open line of communication, right? This is from some robot, it's from our database, it's from eTapestry or Bloomerang or whatever, and it's not from a human being. So it doesn't feel like there's really an open line of communications. And this is an issue that I'm a little bit obsessed with, maybe to a fault perhaps. I like to do little secret shopping experiments. I like to isolate one major metropolitan city and make several gifts to random nonprofits in those cities just to see, hey, what are they sending? What are they sending to new online donors? Are they doing some of these things from the survey that I've been sharing with you? And I have something really cool to share with you guys. This has never been seen before, but I made some gifts on Giving Tuesday a few days ago.
Which, by the way, before you do that, I would say as a nonprofit leader out there, you should. I think that's a great idea that you should be doing. Just give to other organizations.
Oh, yeah.
Just see what that feels like, because we get so involved in our own work that we forget. So if you're a nonprofit leader, do exactly that. So Stephen, that's a great
Absolutely.
idea. So can't wait to see.
Yeah, give to organizations like yourself. Give to organizations that are not like yourself, that maybe are in a geographic radius, and see what other people do. You may get some cool ideas from people who do neat things here. Here's my hypothesis. I thought that the Giving Tuesday follow-up and stewardship would be the worst out of all of the experiments we've done. So this is the fourth time we've done it. And my hypothesis was proved correct. I got 23 email receipts. I got 12 thank you letters in the mail. One of them included an appeal. So they had a little envelope and they asked me for a gift in the thank you. I call that a ask. It's like an ask and a thank you. Definitely would not encourage anyone to do that. It violates all of those things that we just went over in the survey. No handwritten notes. I got one phone call. I would say only one organization out of the 25 really kind of did anything special. They left me a very nice voicemail. Hey, Stephen, thanks so much for the gift. On Giving Tuesday, we really appreciate it. We can't wait to show you all the cool things that we're going to do with that gift going forward. And then afterwards, of course, I started to get appeals and other things. I received email newsletters, an event invitation, which was interesting because I do not live in this city at all, and I doubt that I would travel to that event. But what really got me is the amount of appeals. 5 appeals total, the 1 ask, the 1 event invitation, and the 3 email appeals. One organization sent me an appeal by email on Giving Tuesday, just a few hours after I had made a donation.
Wow.
So that tells me that they're not really, they didn't suspend me from perhaps a previously scheduled appeal that was already going out. And we don't do that. We're not very good at sort of segmenting our current donors and communicating to them in a way that makes sense just for them. So I was a little disheartened by these results, and you can read the full blog post on your own if you want to look at the full results there. But I'd say only really one organization out of the 25 really did anything that has a remote chance of keeping me retained going forward. And I know when I show these experiments, a couple people will always say, and maybe some of you are thinking this right now, well, Stephen, you only gave $5. What did you expect? No one's going to throw a parade in your honor. But so much of this can be automated. It's an issue of maybe just editing these receipts to be a little bit more friendly and personal. A phone call doesn't take that much time, honestly. I think it takes less time than perhaps generating a snail mail letter and putting it in an envelope and writing the address and mailing it. And those things aren't, very impactful or personal at all. So in order to kind of stand amongst the crowd and really make that donor feel special, it doesn't take any more time. I think it could take less time than the things we're already used to doing, which aren't really impactful. So what should we be doing? We should be thinking quickly, and that does not include the receipt. That receipt that I received on the same day of the gift, that's not the thank you. I was waiting days and weeks, in some cases, for those actual thank yous via mail. Going overboard with appreciation, showering the donor with appreciation. Hey, Stephen, we can't thank you enough. You're a new donor. We love that. Letting the donor know or reiterating what kind of donor they are. Hey, thanks for your first gift. We can't wait to get this relationship going with you. We'd love to learn more about you just as much as you want to learn about us. always keeping that donor-centric tone. It's always about the donor. Telling the donor, hey, how are we going to use that gift? Maybe it's going towards a specific fund or a campaign or a project, or maybe there was a recent success story we had. Stephen, thanks for the gift. I just want to tell you a story of a recent graduate who went through our program. He's the first kid to graduate college in his family, and a big part of that was all the work that our donors do to support our services. So even though none of these organizations have spent my donation yet, but you can always tell them how previous donations have had an impact, perhaps. Telling them what comes next, right? So we saw from the survey that one of the top reasons is that the donor knows what to expect from your organization with each interaction. So we'd be telling them, hey, thanks for your gift. We're going to be sending you our email newsletter, or be on the lookout for a thank you letter in the mail, or be on the lookout for an event invitation. Check out our social media profiles to see some cool stories there. Always be kind of telling them what kinds of things you're going to be sending going forward. And none of the 25 gifts that I made did that at all. And perhaps that would have lessened the annoyance of getting maybe an appeal or an event invitation or a newsletter, because we don't necessarily expect those things or want those things. And then lastly, keeping the lines of communication open, soliciting feedback, giving the donor an email address, a name, and a phone number that they can reach out to ask questions, maybe even sending a survey. Hey, Stephen, you're a first-time donor. We'd love to learn more about you. Would you mind filling out this quick survey? Just the act of being sent a survey has been known to increase retention, because it makes sense. It shows that the organization really wants to know something about that donor. And none of the gifts I made did this. Only that one voicemail really kind of created that opportunity for a one-to-one communication.
I've never met a donor or know of an organization that said that the donors felt like they were thanked too much. You can never overthink a donor.
Nope.
So
absolutely not. And I definitely got underthanked, except for maybe that one voicemail.
That's fascinating.
Wow. Yeah. So how are we going to do this? I think the easiest way to tackle this is to begin to segment your donors. So what this is kind of my homework for all of you listening, is isolate the people who gave to you on Giving Tuesday 2 weeks ago. And I would put them into at least 4 buckets. So you have 2 buckets for new donors who have only given once on that Giving Tuesday, and you have 2 buckets for donors who have given to you in the past but also gave on Giving Tuesday. And then I would further divide them by gift size. So calculate your average gift amount. Maybe it's $100, maybe it's $25, whatever it is for your organization, and put them in a separate bucket. So new donors who are below average, and repeat donors who are below average, and then new and repeat donors who are above average. And then what you can do is begin to communicate to these donors in a different way. We want to send 4 thank you letters. We want to send 4 different perhaps appeals going forward. We want to do something different for these donors, because a new donor needs something different than a repeat donor. Or perhaps, to put it a better way, repeat donors do not need to hear the same things from you as a new donor, right? It's a new relationship. You don't know each other yet. So maybe for the new donor who is above average, maybe those are the people that you make a phone call to. If you're worried about being able to call all of these donors, which can be a lot of work, I would call the new donors who are above average. Maybe someone gave $100 on Giving Tuesday for the first time. You don't know them. Get that person on the phone. That's a huge opportunity to learn about them, say thank you in person, and get that relationship going forward. A repeat donor who was given below average, maybe he gave $10 on Giving Tuesday. He's made a few annual gifts before in the past. Think about ways that you can appeal to that donor that are unique. Perhaps you want to introduce monthly giving to that donor. Hey, Stephen, thanks for the $10 Giving Tuesday gift. You've given to us loyally in the past. We really appreciate it. You're making all these awesome things happen. By the way, would you ever consider maybe a $10 monthly gift? And this is the kind of impact that you can make through those gifts. So when you start to segment your donors in this way, you can really do some interesting personalized communications towards all of them, and increase your chances of getting a meaningful reaction. Because I know that those 25 gifts I made on Giving Tuesday, I got the same thank you letter that every single other Giving Tuesday donor got, regardless of whether they were a new donor or a repeat donor, how much they gave. any information I gave them on the donation form, I know that they sent one letter to every single donor, because the letters I got were not personalized. Most of them didn't even use my name, and none of them talked about the fact that I was a first-time donor. None of them shared any, demographic information that I had given. But we got to get away from this. And appeals are the same way. I know that over the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to get the same appeal that every other type of donor is going to get, just because I'm in the system. That's probably why I got that appeal automatically, because I just got thrown into the system. There was already an appeal scheduled, and my name got added, and I got that appeal. So it's not just acknowledgments, it's the appeals as well. You can do some really interesting things when you break up your donors. So this is my main homework for you, is to run 4 reports in your donor database or whatever you're using. If you're using Excel, I think you can still make it happen, and isolate them into 4 groups. And then think about, what are we going to do? How are we going to thank these donors if we haven't already thanked them? And what are we going to send them the rest of the year that really makes sense for that specific type of donor? Maybe it's a phone call, a survey, a monthly gift ask. Maybe it's a volunteer invitation. Those repeat donors who are below average, those are awesome potential volunteers, because they obviously like you, but they have maybe limited financial means. They're not making big gifts. But let's see if they would become a volunteer and give in other ways that are meaningful. So you can do lots of different personalized asks when you segment this way. So for new donors, let them know that it's their first gift. Hey, Stephen, thanks for your gift. It's the first time you've given. We're so excited. How did you hear about us? What's your interest in the cause? Get that conversation going. Tell them how their gift will be used, and perhaps tell them a story of how previous gifts have been used, success stories, outcome stories. Let them know what comes next. Hey, over the next few months, we're going to be sending you our newsletter. Hey, we have our big event in March. This is the event. Be on the lookout for that invitation. We'd love to see you there. New donors, if you can call them, call them. If they have given you a phone number, if that phone number was not required on their donation form, please call these guys. That's an invitation. If you can't, at least a handwritten note, just something that shows that you spent a little bit more time in that gift acknowledgement. And these are also great donors to survey. Send them a quick, SurveyMonkey link, 2 or 3 questions. Why did you give? What's your connection to the cause? Find out something about them, because that will inform your efforts going forward. For repeat donors, you don't have to do a lot of those things. I would certainly acknowledge, hey, thanks for giving on Giving Tuesday. We know that's kind of an extra thing. You're an annual donor and you've already given your annual gift. Hey, we want to say thank you for that extra Giving Tuesday gift, right? So sort of acknowledge that they did something above and beyond, right? They'll appreciate that. Do something unique for them. Maybe it's a handwritten note. Maybe you shoot them a little thank you video. Remember, these are already loyal donors. You really want to do something for these folks to make sure they stay with you, because again, there's not a lot of chairs left on the dance floor for dollars being spread around. Maybe as you think about future appeals, and I've said this before, but based on their dollar amount or frequency, maybe you introduced a major gift fundraising process, maybe a monthly gift ask. Maybe it's bequest giving or legacy giving, but make sure that appeal is not just the same appeal that you're sending to every single donor. Do something different for them, something that makes sense based on how much they've given and how long they have been giving, because you may sort of cannibalize your efforts there by offending them based on your ask, or making an ask that doesn't really make sense for those guys. When it comes to thanking your donors, timeliness, we saw that timeliness word. Get that thank you out as quickly as possible. If you haven't sent your formal thank you, whether it's a letter or another email or a phone call or whatever you do, I challenge you to get that out today. It has been 2 weeks, and that timeliness is kind of running out there. Make sure you tell them what comes next in that communication track, and use their communication preference. If they didn't give you a phone number, don't go looking for their phone number and call them. They may not want that. If they gave online and you don't have their mailing address, or you didn't get that from the credit card processor, perhaps, you might have to use email. But maybe look at previous gifts and the ways they have given. If they've sent you checks in the mail and haven't made many digital gifts, kind of use those context clues to decide how you're going to acknowledge that gift. And you don't just have to choose one. You can do 2 out of 3 or all 3 perhaps. And like Dan said, no one really complained about being thanked too much. You can be appealed too much perhaps, but not thanked, I don't think.
Well, the other thing that a lot of nonprofit workers this time of year talk about, I don't have time. Those are great also ways to get your board involved and some of your volunteers to come in. I mean, you can have board members making phone calls. You can have staff. You can even have program participants, alumni from your nonprofit get on the phone and make those calls. So I think those are excellent tips.
That's a great idea. And I would even go a step further, Dan, and say that there is nothing more important than this. I mean, retaining donors and making your current donors feel special should be the top priority, because it can be so expensive to lose these people and have to go out and acquire new donors and start this all over again. I mean, it's a treadmill, right?
Yeah.
We spend so much time acquiring these donors. It's expensive. It's time consuming, but we just forget about the people who are already excited about us. Because there's other things to do. Oh, we got to put this event on, or we got to get our appeal out the door before December 1st or whatever it is. But this is the most important. This should be the top priority. This is just some data for you. When the timely word is kind of nebulous, but here's some data that shows that 48 hours is kind of a nice little time frame. And I know we're way past 48 hours. But this kind of shows you why you should get those gift acknowledgments out the door so quickly. It increases retention rates, and it also increases the next gift size, depending on who does the thanking there. So some research that you can dig into as well. Donor centricity. Print out your thank you letter and cross off any we and I and turn it into a you. You want it to be all about the donor. You're the hero of this story. You're doing all these awesome things. We couldn't do these things without you. 9 times out of 10, you can transform that we word to you, and the sentence is still grammatically correct. So if you use Bloomerang, you can do this automatically. If you don't have Bloomerang, print out your letter, get a red pen, do it the old-fashioned way. I think Microsoft Word can help you do this with just a find and replace tool as well. But make sure those communications are donor-centric. Do it for your letters, your emails, your newsletter, everything you send out with written words. You want to be as donor-centric as possible. Subject lines. Avoid words like receipt. Most of those 25 gifts I gave, I think 10 or 12 of them, I got a receipt, and that was it. And it just felt very transactional. It didn't feel very personal. It didn't really give me those warms and fuzzies. So maybe do something more fun, like, hey, what's the impact? You just changed a life, or you just put a kid through college, or you just saved, this puppy. Make them start to think about the impact of the gift even before they open up that email. Speaking of keeping lines of communication open, can't do that when you're sending emails from a robot. Maybe your donor database automatically defaults to an email address like this, but get rid of those. Have it come from Stephen at nonprofit.org or Dan at nonprofit.org. Make it come from a person so that they can reply to you, and not only just enable them to reply to you, but ask them to reply. Send them a survey, ask them questions, solicit feedback, make them feel like you care what they think about the organization and about the mission, and that you want to help. So don't be afraid to solicit that feedback. Be proactive about it. Create a quick survey on Google Forms or SurveyMonkey. You can put that in all of your automatic email responses. You can send that out in your sort of one-off email thank yous. It's a quick win right there. Not everyone is going to fill out the survey. That's not really the point. Just the sheer act of soliciting that feedback is going to make them feel good. And if you get some survey responses, there's some data for you that maybe you can put into action with that donor or with your future donors going forward. So it's a quick win. And it's not going to do any harm, certainly. So surveys are great. I love surveys, especially for new donors, because you don't know them yet. When we think about changing these receipts into true email acknowledgments, they should really just look like letters, but in electronic form. Go into your donor database, and if you're sending out kind of a boring, grocery store receipt, change it into a nice email thank you. Send them back to your website. Tell them what you're going to send them. Send them a video clip or a photo. make these into true gift acknowledgments. And if you're sending an email after that, those emails can be just as personal and just as impactful. I really like this one. I would recommend getting the slides. We'll send it to slides, but this is one that you can kind of copy. Thank you for investing. So this investment word comes up. You got a nice photo that shows the real impact of the work they do. And there's lots of great language in that text there. I won't read it all to you, but they do some really cool things. And give them something to do. Send them to social media, send them back to your website, send them to a survey. Give those donors something to do. Keep them engaged, because if they just give and you send a receipt, that's the end. And you may not hear from them again until next year when you send out that appeal. But keep that communication going forward. Keep them engaged. Give them something to do. If you send letters through the mail, do something to stand out. I mean, all these letters that I got. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that you send Mad Libs to all your donors. Don't run out and tell your development director that this crazy guy from Bloomerang said we need to send Mad Libs. But all those letters I got, none of them stood out. They all looked basically the same. They all looked very templated. Thanks for your donation, blah, blah, blah. See you next year. But people open their mail over the recycling bin in their kitchen or in their home office. You want something that a person is going to put on their fridge or on their mantle. Handwritten notes, photos, something fun. This one really shows that they took some time to personalize the gift acknowledgement.
In the same line as making donations to nonprofits, I would say as a nonprofit leader, collect those too. I mean, I get just like you do, Stephen. I get those in the mail and I put them in a basket and go through them and then I make stacks of ones that kind of turn me off and ones that I really love. So I think that's a good exercise. One of our listeners, say Mary Barkworth, commented on your comment about polls or surveys. She said, and it's a really great point. She said, that you shouldn't have to have that tax after you making a donation doing the work. She says she doesn't like surveys. So, that's a good point, Mary.
Yeah, and that just goes back to not everyone's going to respond to it, but I think that the psychological impact of receiving it and seeing that you care is the main thing there. Slip a little link right in your email receipt, the things that you're already sending.
Make it easy.
It doesn't have to be a separate email or a one-off email. Maybe just include that link in things you're already sending.
Sure.
I think can improve those things.
Cool.
Don't forget social media. I mean, Giving Tuesday, you probably use social media to solicit the gift, so don't be afraid to use it to thank the donor. And this isn't meant to replace the thank you letter or the email or the phone call, but it could be a fun way to kind of supplement those things. Purdue University here in Indiana, they did an online day of giving, very similar to Giving Tuesday, and every time someone donated, they asked for a Twitter handle on the donation form, which I thought was kind of fun. They also listened for people who were talking about giving, but didn't necessarily give Purdue their Twitter handle on the donation. But anytime someone did that, they shot a little thank you video and tweeted that back out to the donor. I thought it was really fun, and the videos are hilarious. They're very personal. They're very impactful, way more impactful than some, boring thank you letter or email. So don't be afraid to maybe jump back on social media and thank those Giving Tuesday donors that gave to you or were talking about you a couple of weeks ago on Giving Tuesday. And that's kind of your social media tribe. That's kind of an interesting segment on its own. We talked about those 4 buckets. Maybe this is the 5th bucket of our social media people, since it is such a digital sort of fundraising day. I talked a little bit about monthly giving. But monthly giving is super sticky for retention. If you get a monthly gift, those retention rates skyrocket. You can see they go from those 20 and 40th percentile into the 80s and 90s. It's hard to cancel a monthly gift. Some donors just kind of forget that it's even there. But it's also a very high engagement signal. The donors who don't forget and want to give to you year after year, month after month, those are your super loyal, engaged donors. So as you look at your Giving Tuesday segments, maybe think about who would we want to introduce monthly giving to out of those 4 segments. Maybe it's a repeat donor who has been giving maybe below average, maybe low gift amounts every year. Maybe consider introducing monthly giving to those donors. I don't know that I would do it right away with the new donors, but perhaps a few months from now, if you've been really doing a good job stewarding those donors, it may make sense to introduce those monthly gifts. But don't just send out an appeal, the same appeal to all your donors. Don't appeal for a monthly gift to all your donors. Segment them, isolate those individual groups, those several different groups, and see which one makes the most sense for a monthly ask. The rest of the slides, I know we've only got about 5 minutes left, but the rest of the slides are really just kind of resources for you. It's important to kind of have your 2017 plan in place. You know, you've got all these new donors. What are we going to send to them the rest of the year? Who's going to send it? Have that plan written out. Here's a sample plan that you can download and alter for your own purposes. You can see this organization knows exactly what that new donor is going to get from us for the rest of the year. They know who's going to send it, what format it's in. It even has appeals. You can see they've mapped out the appeals as well. It's not just the sort of stewardship and banking type things. So know what you're going to do and create a plan for just Giving Tuesday donors is my advice here. Not just all your donors who are first-time donors, but what's the plan for first-time donors who gave on Giving Tuesday? What's the unique plan for those guys? Here's another sample plan that you can download and try out for yourself. It's a little bit more aggressive than this one for sure, but you may glean some things and see, hey, you know, that's kind of a good idea. Maybe we would do something like that for our folks. But the name of the game is we're going to segment those Giving Tuesday donors, break them up into 2 groups, 4 groups. You could even go beyond 4 groups if you want to get super nerdy. Do something different for each of them. Make sure they have been thanked. You know, look back and see, hey, some of these donors, all they got from us was that, you know, Razor's Edge receipt or that PayPal receipt. Let's do something more. They gave $50, they gave $100. Let's call them. Let's get them a handwritten note in the mail. Let's do something before year end. We saw the power of phone calls. I love phone calls. I wish I had gotten 25 phone calls from those donations. I only got 1. Missed opportunity to say thank you, but also get to know that donor a little bit more. Make sure all of your content is donor-centric. You know, lots of you words, put that spotlight on the donor. And the point of this is getting that second gift. And you can ask for a second gift soon. You can ask in 2 months, 3 months. But make sure that donor feels really special before you do that. Because if you just swoop in and say, you know, hey, it's March, you gave on Giving Tuesday, and we're sending in another appeal, because that's what we do right now. That's what we do in March, without really kind of thinking about what that appeal should be, or does it really make sense for this donor. But don't be afraid to ask for another gift as long as it's personal and it makes sense for that individual donor or that individual segment, that group of donors. We'll get you the slides, but you may enjoy this ebook that I wrote. It's all about how to retain online donors in general. It goes beyond all the things that I talked about today, beyond Giving Tuesday to all facets of online donors, people who give through your website, people who give through peer-to-peer, social media. We'll send that. I'll get you that ebook. Just send me a tweet or shoot me an email if you don't get that for any reason, or if you want that, I'll send that to you.
Yeah, so this webinar is recorded. Yeah. We record this, and then what we'll do is everybody that's on this webinar, we'll send you an automatic. We'll send you a little link where you can see the recording, the slides, re-listen to it, show it to your friends and family at Christmas, and you know, it's so good. But yeah, we'll have this available for you.
Cool. There's lots of other resources. I've got a thank you letter template that I think has all the elements to make a successful thank you letter. Same thing for an email thank you letter. If you want to go and transform those boring receipts into a real thank you email. Oh, I flip-flopped it, I guess. But get both of those. It'll cover your bases for email and snail mail. Lots of other great resources on our website. My newsletter, we've got a daily blog, we've got our own webinar series. Boomerang pays me to do all this cool stuff. It's a really fun job, so I'd love for you to check that out as well. But yeah, we'll get you all that good stuff. So Dan, any questions? I'm happy to stick around later.
We're going to kind of let it up to you guys that are listening. If you guys have questions, in the question box, we're seeing your questions right now. Somebody just asked if you can email the link. And absolutely. Are you referring to the link to this webinar, or to specifically to Stephen's ebook, Steve? If you could just let me know which link you're looking for, we'll respond to that. But really, this is your time to do that. Joyce would like an ebook. So again, in the follow up, we'll send you the various links for that. I would just like to say that if you're still kind of old school and not using any kind of donor database, Bloomerang is a great resource. Aplos, we deal in accounting software. These are the kinds of things you can do to kind of up your game. And again, it's not a sales thing at all, but it's just a way to remind you that by using your database, you can get to know your donors a little bit better. I agree with you, Stephen. I think in some ways, I'm not as huge of a fan of Giving Tuesday as an end all, but what I like to say is that it's a nice tool to have in your toolbox. It's kind of, I think in some ways it's here to stay for a little bit.
Definitely.
But I think these are excellent tips. So any other questions? So Steve Sullivan asked, does it integrate with accounting software and Salesforce? Which I'm not sure which part does on your question on that, Steve. So if you could let me know more specifically what you're asking on that. Any other questions for that? I did see, Stephen, and you might have a comment on that as we wrap up, that a couple thoughts of people that did have success with Giving Tuesday. I saw recently that a few points on that. People that had a plan in advance, not just for Giving Tuesday, but their follow-up plan. People that did morning and evening emails were more successful. People that had a special offer, such as a match, or some kind of extra special thing, and a goal. If you set a goal, they find to be a little bit more successful. So that's just some things to think about, for next year.
I believe all that. And one tidbit from my analysis was that most people, hopefully you're still seeing my screen, most people sent their email. They sent one email, and it went out before noon. It got very quiet in the afternoon, which may be an opportunity for folks. It seems like, hey, we scheduled our 9 a.m. Giving Tuesday appeal, and hopefully we get some gifts. But I completely can see where that data is coming from. Lots of people kind of gave up after one approach and didn't do much after 12 p.m. Eastern. So definitely an opportunity there.
Yeah. So Steve's question is about integration, and Aplos and Bloomerang, we are a partner together, so we have an integration together. In terms of Salesforce, I can't answer for Steve, for you on Salesforce, but Salesforce is kind of a different animal for us. So we don't integrate with Salesforce.
We compete with Salesforce. We would want you to use Bloomerang and not Salesforce.
Yeah.
In fact, I would like you to use anything other than Salesforce if you're a nonprofit, because it is not a nonprofit product. So.
I agree with you. Eddie asked the question, what do you recommend that we do for people that gave larger gifts, 500 plus? Well, first of all, I'd say give yourself a big congratulations, because that's huge.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Circle those guys, highlight them, call them, handwritten note. They got to feel the most special, for sure. And make sure that you make yourself a note to report back to them maybe in March or in June of how those dollars were spent. And it doesn't have to be the exact, down to the penny, this went to this purpose, but share some sort of success story that maybe happened in the subsequent 6 months.
Yeah.
Tell them a story and get them, because you want to get them addicted to that outcome, to that impact. Like, oh my gosh, this is the awesome things that my gift are making possible. I can't wait to give again.
Yeah.
But do something special for those folks for sure. And good for you for isolating those people, because isolating those people and knowing who those different types of donors are is 90% of the battle, and most people don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, I want to be sensitive to everybody's time. It is 5 after 11. Lisa does have a quick question here. We are a new nonprofit. Do you think it's not too late to send and ask by Christmas Eve? No, I don't think it's too late.
No.
You have the ability to pop something out. I'm still getting some. You're still 9 days out. As Stephen said in the beginning of his presentation. The last few days, I think somewhere around 40% of the nonprofits receive most of their gifts in December. It's a great time of year. Just don't sound rushed. Take a few extra minutes to craft your message and using some of the tips that Stephen suggested here.
Don't send the same appeal to everyone on Christmas Eve or whatever.
Yeah.
You should be sending maybe 4 different appeals. Segment those donors by some sort of information, whether it's their frequency or recency of giving or gift size or gift channel. Do something different because it'll just increase your odds of success. And the other thing I would say is ask for something specific. Don't just say, hey, it's Christmas Eve. Could you make a donation? And that's it. Maybe ask a specific dollar amount, and maybe those 4 segments each have a different dollar amount.
Yeah.
But be as specific as possible in the appeal, because the more the donor has to decide for themselves, like, well, how much should I give? What are they going to do with it? What fund? The more of those questions you can remove from their mind, the higher the conversion rate will be of that appeal.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. And thank you, Steve, from Bloomerang. Really excellent stuff. I mean, just can't thank you enough for your time and the work you guys do out there. And you guys provide great content and great reminders. So I want to wish everyone a happy holidays. You can check out both Bloomerang's website and the Aplos website for other webinars and content. And we'll see some of you guys again in January. We've got a list of some more special guests next year coming up. So with that, I apologize for the technical glitches at the beginning, but we will have this recorded and up for you real shortly. So Steve, thank you, and wish you guys all a happy holiday and a great successful fundraising for the end of the year. So we'll see you.
All right.
Thanks.
See you guys.